Israel has resumed its genocide against Palestinians, proving to be even more brutal after the 2-month ceasefire. Palestinians need our help more than ever. Keep donating to fundraisers and aid organizations on the ground, keep sharing updates from Palestinians, keep following the BDS boycott. The occupation must end. And do not forget about the genocides in Sudan and Congo, which have been happening for over a year as well. For those of us who do not endure these horrific circumstances, we must do what we can to help. Donation links are in the description. COVID is still here, it's still dangerous even if you're healthy, it's still killing thousands of people every week and infecting and hospitalizing many more. It can spread from individuals who are asymptomatic, and asymptomatic cases can still cause lasting damage to your health. There's a vaccine for new variants that came out a few months ago, so now is a good time to get that booster if you have the ability to do so and you have not done so already. Bird flu is becoming a growing concern now as well. Please use caution when around livestock and when consuming animal products. And at least in the US, and I've also heard that there was a bunch of cases in Canada recently, measles is becoming a growing concern now. Please continue masking or start masking again if you've stopped. Stay safe. Hello, it's Rachel. So, I honestly wasn't planning to talk about season 3 of the Newsreader. I was planning to just make my silly, deranged Tim Dale video, and that would be the one and only time I talked about the show on my channel. But that video ended up being one of my more popular ones, so I figured maybe people would want a space to talk about the show, and doing a season 3 review could kind of function as that space. So, since I will be talking about the 3rd season, yes, there are going to be spoilers. I have quite a few thoughts, and I want to discuss some things in detail, which is impossible to do without spoiling things. So if you don't want to be spoiled, hold off on watching this until after you've watched season 3. Now that that disclaimer is out of the way, my initial reaction when I watched season 3 was that I liked it, but I did feel kind of underwhelmed by the finale, and I was struggling to verbalize why, other than being a bit disappointed that I didn't get the chance to see Dale embracing his bisexuality and starting to explore romantic connections with men. And while I still overall like season 3, um, at least when I started writing this, I don't know how I feel now that I've finished the script and am recording, honestly. But while I do overall still like the show, I feel like the longer I sit with season 3, the more my dissatisfaction grows. So let me break down the season 3 developments into 3 categories. First, the good, second, the neutral, and third, the underwhelming or quote unquote bad. So, the good. Helen's storyline of being diagnosed with BPD is honestly the best writing of the entire show, in my opinion. It's been pretty clear since the first episode that Helen is not exactly mentally well, and the BPD diagnosis made a lot of sense given the erratic and self-destructive behavior that she has displayed the past 2 seasons. I love the way the show depicted her breakdown upon receiving the diagnosis and processing it, the difficulty Helen initially had with therapy, and seeing her therapist help her find a coping mechanism. Like, I would say every second of this plot thread was pure perfection, and it made me so happy to see Helen finally reach a sense of stability in the final episodes, and to know in my gut that no matter what difficulties she might face in the future, that she now has the tools to handle it. I also love the way the season stressed that Dale and Helen are each other's person, and that they just trusted each other with everything. Helen having her breakdown after receiving the diagnosis, and Dale being there to help her process and comfort her as she was spiraling. Dale literally having his own mental breakdown because he's in the middle of being blackmailed, but still rushing over to check in on Helen after the article about her history with being institutionalized came out. Helen dropping everything and rushing to Dale after his car accident post his public meltdown, and staying with him to make sure he's in a good mental space, especially after the resulting negative press. Also, just the way that that kind of parallels how their relationship started in the first episode of the show. Like, I just really love how they they've been through so much and they just constantly prioritized each other, and just the way that um their dynamic just screams soulmates. Like, I personally don't ship them romantically. Season 2 really turned me off from them as a romantic pairing because just the way they clashed constantly. I'm just not interested in that kind of dysfunction. But yeah, basically just the way that they're like each other's anchors through the season. It was excruciating to watch Dale start spiraling over the public's perception of him, but this was so well executed and a necessary development for his story. I think I said it in my Tim Dale video, but Dale has been so repressed and miserable because of his obsession with fitting into this heteronormative ideal and his deep need to please people and be liked. And that had to crumble before he could truly accept himself and be comfortable in his skin. It makes a lot of sense that Dale would push the people-pleasing to an extreme until he broke under the pressure. And as painful as this process was, I'm so happy to see him on the other side of this. Okay, so I know I have a whole 30-minute video where I argue that Tim and Dale should be endgame, but I genuinely really liked seeing Tim and Lee together. Tim deserves a happy ending, and Lee seems like a great guy from the limited time he has on screen. Seeing them have moments of happiness at Cheryl's wedding was so wholesome and cute. But forgive me, I do have Tim Dale brain rot, so let me be emotional about them for a moment. So, firstly, we have Tim voice that he's having second thoughts about making this relationship public, given most of the guests are treating him and Lee as pariahs. Dale is supportive of Tim, and because he explicitly voices support, that makes Tim brave enough to take Lee on the dance floor later. And then upon the negative reaction from guests when Tim does this, Dale pulls Kay to the dance floor to encourage other people to interact with them. And just the solidarity of that action, like, Dale isn't brave enough to be where Tim is right now, but there's like that recognition of seeing himself in Tim. And I also kind of view this as Dale trying to make up for his past behavior. Like, Dale's not ready to be out, but he is past the denial stage that he was in the first 2 seasons. And he clearly is at a point where he understands what Tim was trying to do and that he was trying to help Dale. And so this is his way of paying that back. I truly love every second of Tim's scenes in episode 5. And I love that it shows that Dale is inching closer to reaching self-acceptance. Hands down, one of the best scenes of the season was when Nolene chewed out Lindsay when he was trying to put the blame on her about losing the Tiananmen Square footage. And then when she went to Public Eye right after and got a job working for Helen, I cheered so much. But Nolene's story in season 3 is kind of a mixed bag, honestly. I put it in the good because I just love Nolene. And her being able to voice her frustrations was refreshing because I feel like she didn't really she wasn't really allowed to be angry in the past 2 seasons. Um, but like as much as I enjoy her putting her foot down and saying no to people and like not putting up with people's bullshit, I hate that she was repeatedly put in this position. Like her work at News at 6 was constantly undervalued, which like that's been the case since day one from higher ups like Lindsay. But then we have episode 2 where she's doing all this work to set up the Bob Hawke interview. And she's in the hospital about to give birth while she's doing this. And no one recognizes everything she did for that. Like, not even Dale thanks her for what she did. And when she's at public eye, she does get more recognition, but like she still works so much harder than everyone else. And Helen easily overlooks everything she did because one time where Nolene wanted to put her family first. Like, it just makes me want to scream how it felt like Nolene had more losses than wins. And even her final win of becoming Public Eye's executive producer doesn't even really feel like a win because, again, Helen was ready to overlook all of her hard work because one time she didn't drop everything for Helen. Like, this was such a peak white woman moment, and it pisses me off so fucking bad because the finale is basically over when Helen and Nolene have this conversation. There's only 15 minutes left of the show. And Nolene has to be like, the one time I said I couldn't do something for you because I was with my family, and you're just gonna, like, deny the chance for me to grow in your company because the one time I didn't drop everything and come in. Like, it makes me so mad. Nolene deserves the world. I'm glad she became better at advocating for herself. I'm glad she has finally found a work-life balance because up until she left News at 6, it really felt like she would constantly let work overrun her personal life. I'm glad she's finally reached a place where she's like, no, my family is important. I'm not going to keep choosing work over them. So Dale joining Helen at Public Eye was not something I was really expecting, but it does feel very fitting as an ending point, especially given what I was just saying earlier about Dale and Helen's relationship. I don't really have anything to say about this development, other than saying I'm really happy to see that Dale does have a genuine passion for journalism, and that it's nice to see that they are continuing to work together. The neutral. Okay, I don't like Rob. I've never liked Rob. He's a bigot. The show finally kind of addresses this now that he and Nolene have had a daughter. And he, like, seemingly finally gets his head out of his ass and is actually reevaluating his past behavior as seen by the storyline with Dino. But then again, Nolene had to, like, break down crying and beg him to actually listen and hear what Dino has to say for him to get the message to, like, do that. So, not great. I think the storyline for that episode started really strong, and I was so happy to see Linus again, and literally everything he said was so right, but I think the show kind of pulled its punches once the episode really gets going. I'm glad Rob is changing for the better. I'm glad Nolene gets to have a happy home life because he is changing. But I don't think the show really satisfactorily deals with his previous ignorance and close-mindedness. Also, I found it incredibly frustrating how things ended on such a sour note for Dino and Linus, with the show prioritizing Rob and Helen's feelings of guilt about having to grapple with their racist biases. Okay, so I understand the narrative purpose of this relationship. Kay wants Dale, and she fits into the idealized life that Dale has been striving towards for all these years. But the show devotes so much time to their relationship and wants me to believe it's some deep romance, and I just don't. It feels like they stumble into this relationship, and Dale just goes along with it because of his desperation to repress his bisexuality. Even before Lindsay blackmails Dale with the threat of outing him, Dale doesn't seem particularly happy with Kay. I mean, I believe he probably enjoys her company to some degree because he's clearly lonely at this point, but he's like barely been masking his misery all season, and it's not like that suddenly goes away when he's with Kay. And then things only get worse once Lindsay threatens him, and he's basically in a constant state of inebriation at that point. So I don't see how it's that deep on Kay's side because, one, I don't remember the timeline off the top of my head because it's been a couple months since I've watched season 3 at this point. But I'm pretty sure their relationship doesn't even last 6 months. So, like, that's very quick to, like, be an important romance of your life. Um, and two, like, it's not like they really had the chance for their relationship to be, like, good because she only knew the facade of Dale, and then the facade drops because he's in a state of emotional turmoil after being blackmailed. And then again, on Dale's end, it seems like he just went along with the relationship because he needs a girlfriend slash wife to fulfill the image he's trying to attain. And again, Kay has been making her interest in him known, so it's very easy to just allow this relationship to happen. And I'm just like, sorry, I did not care at all about their relationship. And then don't get me started on Kay being biphobic when Dale told her about the blackmail. Fuck you, Kay. The underwhelming slash bad. There was so much Lindsay. What an insufferable, disgusting human being. He was always horrendous, but the third season dials that up even more, and he gets so much screen time. After his outbursts at Dale's party, it honestly got to a point that every time he was on screen, I started feeling physically ill. I get that the main story arc of the season was him finally being ousted from News at 6, so we had to see him fully off the rails for his comeuppance to be more satisfying, but dear God, it did not happen fast enough. Also, the fact that the CEO was at Dale's party and saw Lindsay's outburst and he didn't get fired because of that was fucking insane. He saw firsthand how Lindsay is abusive to his employees, that he lost an important scoop and refused to take responsibility for it being his mistake. And Dale and Rob basically have to beg him to fire Lindsay, and the CEO is still hesitant. But then he overhears Lindsay badmouth him to Evelyn, and he immediately fires Lindsay. Fuck off. Fuck off. That made me so mad. You literally see him be abusive to his employees, and you're like, he can stay. And then he talks shit about you, and you're like, no, I can't accept this. Fuck off. Oh my God. I don't really feel like Tim and Dale's relationship gets closure. I know Tim is dating Lee, and again, I like Lee. I support this relationship. And the Tim Lee relationship means the door is closed on a Tim Dale romantic relationship. But like, other than the display of solidarity that Dale shows at the wedding, I don't really get the same sense of care that the first two seasons showed. Like, I think about the season 1 finale where Tim specifically goes to Dale's apartment to make sure he's okay. When Tim has every reason to be angry with him for his panicked reaction to their kiss and the botched age report. I think about the season 2 finale when Tim wanted to give Dale a heads up about the gossip columnist, even though Dale was still firmly in the closet. And if we're being honest, he was being a huge dick to Tim. Like, at the wedding, Dale literally has to run off to the bathroom to use drugs, and he's like clearly not in a good mental space. And he even gives a speech where he's like stumbling over his words because he's so inebriated. And Tim is seemingly oblivious to this. Dale has an on-air breakdown, and as far as the audience knows, Tim doesn't even call him on the phone to like make sure he's okay. Like, it's just strange. Like, Tim's whole character in the first 2 seasons is this deeply kind, caring, comforting presence. And it just feels off that he doesn't seem to notice that Dale is in a bad headspace. And this is like the worst. Dale has spiraled out of control. Like, it's just weird. But back to the thought that there's not really closure for their dynamic. So, season 2 repeatedly makes the point that Dale hasn't moved on from his feelings for Tim. I'm not going to rehash my Tim Dale video. If you want my collection of proof about the romance being a very important aspect of the show as a whole, just watch that video, because I talk about it for 30 minutes. But these feelings aren't really addressed in season 3. Like, again, yes, I know, Tim is dating Lee, so the show is literally telling us that Tim and Dale missed their window to be together. But how does the show throw them back into each other's orbits? Because the writers didn't need to do that. And then they don't even have a frank conversation about what could have been if Dale hadn't been so repressed. Like, yes, we see that Tim and Dale are friends in the first season, but there's this undercurrent of attraction and yearning that they cannot act on because of Dale's repression. That is like the basis of their dynamic for the first 2 seasons. This wanting, but it can't go anywhere. And it's just not acknowledged at all in the 3rd season. And it's just bizarre. So I said in my Tim Dale video that the 3rd season was going to have Dale finally accept his sexuality. And I mean, I was right, but the show also ends so early in this journey of self-acceptance. Like, we're practically halfway through the finale before Dale is finally free from the toxic environment that is News at 6. And of course, while he's in that space, he can't fully accept himself. Like, his repression literally stems from his job. Sure, he's gotten slightly more comfortable with himself and is able to hire a male sex worker now, something that would have been unthinkable for season 1 Dale. But he's still publicly pursuing this heteronormative ideal through his relationship with Kay. Another prediction I was right about, Dale did indeed break ties with News at 6. But Dale doesn't get to do this on his own terms. Instead, as I've already mentioned, Dale has a public meltdown on air and is fired as a result. And then to add insult to injury, Dale is outed by Evelyn and Kay in the newspaper. And the whole Malters family can go fuck themselves. It pisses me off how much season 3 made me dislike Kay, because she was like easily in my top 5 characters in season 2. But season 3 just proved that, God, she really is Evelyn and Jeff's daughter, and that whole family is fucking rotten. Anyway, I hate storylines about people being outed unless the point of said storyline is to express that this is an act of violence. And, like, that's really not the case here. Like, Dale barely has a reaction to being outed. He has this public meltdown, is pretty much immediately outed by someone he trusted, and then a few days later, he's just in Berlin, back to reporting like nothing happened. And this has been the number one thing that Dale has been terrified of for literally at least a decade. Like, how does this not have a more serious effect on him? How is the show just like nonchalant about this? Like, it's mind boggling. Also, given the pressure he felt from trying to please his mom and how she exacerbated a lot of his shame about his sexuality, I find their interaction after he's outed to be incredibly frustrating. Like, given the whole theme of Dale needing to stop living for other people, I wanted to see him finally being unapologetically authentic. But even though he's no longer willing to repress the truth, deny the truth about himself, he is still yearning for her approval. And I just wanted him to be further in his journey of self-acceptance. Like, we spent 3 seasons with Dale being so repressed and so miserable, and this is all we get? Like, yes, given what we've seen of Dale's relationship with his mother, it's unlikely he would want to cut ties with her. But, like, I wanted him to at least be in the stage of self-acceptance where he's like, you need to accept this about me, or we need to negotiate new boundaries to our relationship. And, like, we just scratched the surface of him starting his journey of self-acceptance. And in my opinion, it felt like the entire point of the show was to see Dale on the other side of this repression. So it feels like a letdown, honestly. Uh, I think that covers pretty much all my thoughts. Thank you for listening to my rambling about the Newsreader. What were your thoughts on the third season? Were you also underwhelmed by this conclusion, or did you enjoy it more than I did? Please feel free to leave a comment and to share your opinions on the third season or the show in general. I'd love to talk about the show more, and I'm sure other people who watch this would also love to talk about the show. If you like this video and you have the means, you can support me on Patreon. I have a $1 tier and a $5 tier, and I'm open to like suggestions of what you guys would be interested in from me. But right now, $1 tier is like quick thoughts on pretty much everything I'm watching. So I do like bi-weekly roundups of everything. And $5, I do video reactions, and of course, you also get the bi-weekly roundups. And if you don't want a monthly commitment, I also have a Ko-Fi for one-time payments. Hopefully I'll see you again soon, and have a great rest of your day. Bye!